A warm good afternoon to all our delegates who have logged in from India. A warm good morning to people from across Europe, US, and an evening to people who have logged in from the Asia Pacific. My name is Kailash Shirodkar. I am the CEO for Smart Water and Waste World. Smart Water and Waste World is a community engagement platform targeting the water and the waste professionals and giving them a platform to share their knowledge and information. Today, we are all gathered for India Water Innovation Week. This is a special initiative where for the next whole week, every day, we are going to have a specific topic on which we have brought together leading experts from all over the world who will share with you technology trends, market insights, panel discussions, and innovative case studies. So to quickly launch India Water Innovation Week, I would like to invite the Honorable Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands, His Excellency Martin van den Berg, to do the opening remarks, please. Sir, all to you.
Thank you so much, and it's really an honor, but even more a pleasure to be part of this inaugural opening session of the Water Innovation Week of India. And it's wonderful to see so many participants in this meeting, digital meeting, and it's always a bit more difficult to connect with all of you during a digital platform than if we are really there in the same room. Nevertheless, it's great to have you all in this platform meeting. And it's for me now about 2 years that I'm the ambassador in India. It's really a big pleasure and an honor to be the ambassador. But I think, like all of us, life because of COVID very much changed in our work, in our daily life. And I'm sure that, and I'm afraid that it will take some time before we can go back to kind of a pre-COVID time. So what I'm also doing very much more than ever is watching movies. And of course, being in India, I very much watch Bollywood movies to get a better understanding of life in India. But if you look to a lot of Indian movies, you see that water is very much part or very much play an important role in many Bollywood movies. But if you look to water in the Bollywood movies, it stands for romance, for drama, for passion, for poetry, a little bit like Singing in the Rain, what we see in the Hollywood movies, a very nice, positive, passionate framing. But as we all know, reality with water sometimes is very, very different. And water is also very much connected to either it's dirty water or we have floodings, disasters, droughts. So I think we all very much have the water challenge today. But I think there's one dimension of the Bollywood frame which is very also present in how we deal with the water challenge, and that's, I think, passion. Passion with people to address this water challenge together between the Netherlands and India. And if you talk about water, I think you always talk about the Netherlands. We have a lot of experience, a long history with water. And it's also very much in our strategy. The Netherlands-India collaboration is also very much focused on the water challenge. We, as the Netherlands, focus very much on the societal goals, the sustainable development goals of the UN, dealing with challenges in our society. And we very much focus on agriculture, on health, on clean drinking water and sanitation, and on the climate action. And of course, the water challenge is very key to most of these societal challenges. So our whole network in India is addressing this. And together, I think India and the Netherlands can really make a difference. The SDGs are important for the Netherlands. They are very important for India. And so together, in joint action, joint research, we can and think we should make a difference. And also in supporting companies to transform their focus of only economic profit to business opportunities centered around societal challenges. The Netherlands and India have already a very, very long and a very strong economic relationship. And this is also true for our relationship in the field of water. It includes data technology, wastewater treatment, water purification, and the Netherlands has been partnering in many, many water projects in India. As we all know, the Ganga is one of the key priorities of Prime Minister Modi, and since he took office in 2014. And when Prime Minister Modi visited the Netherlands and had a meeting with my Prime Minister Rutte, they agreed that the Netherlands would work together with India to clean up the Ganga. A MOU was signed in the field of water management in June 2017. And this has resulted in the Indo-Dutch Water Cooperation, where both countries collaborate in several projects, including assistance in leather industries in Kanpur and Umal, adopt eco-friendly technologies, or conservation of water through efficient agricultural practices in the sugarcane industry. So there are many examples where we work together between knowledge institutions, between companies, but also there's a G2G collaboration between the Netherlands and the government and Department of Science and Technology, which have resulted in establishing a Dutch Water Alliance for Leadership Initiative, the so-called Diwali initiative. And this offers opportunities for both economic and technological cooperation between Dutch and Indian public and private entities. A good example is the so-called Lotus HR project. This project is a collaboration with DBT to set up a Barapula Lotus project, developing innovative, scalable, low-cost technologies to clean the Yamuna River in Delhi. And this is called the Barapula. It's a very, very important and a very visible project in how we work together in joint research, but also very much in implementing new technologies for cleaning up a river. Dutch water institutions like Deltaris and IHA Delft have provided capacity building programs in the field of water resource management to Indian officials. And we have also, and I can see him already in my screen, Henk Oving, a special envoy for international water affairs to take the water challenge and to address the water challenge in many, many urban areas. Their program, Water as Leverage for Resilient Cities Asia, is collaborating with Chennai and tackles urban water-related challenges in a very innovative, inclusive way. The Netherlands has an excellent track record in innovative technologies, and our ambition is to make them fit, to adapt them to Indian challenges. Park, for example, is a company, a Dutch company, very active, very successful in India, who succeeded in that. But also a company like Royal Haskoning DHV, which this year has won the prize for Water Technology Company of the Year by Global Water Intelligence. Just two companies being very active, being very innovative in addressing the water challenges in the Netherlands, in India, and worldwide. But also companies like Solidaridad, Waste, Waternet have been very active in India for a very, very long time, addressing issues of irrigation, municipal water, and wastewater. So Dutch companies are active and working jointly together with Indian companies and institutions to address the huge water challenge we all face. So it's just a wonderful example how we work together and how we should work together, and together we really can make a difference. I think we are great partners, we, the Netherlands and India, and together we can and should make a difference. Yes, we can. And it is also wonderful to have this Water and Innovation Week. So I'm very, very happy hereby to officially open the 5th India Water Innovation Week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the opening remarks. I would now like to invite Henk Oving, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs for the Kingdom of Netherlands, to give a special address.
Thank you, Kailash, for giving me the floor. Thank you, Ambassador, for opening this week. Thank you to the organizers and the partners for putting such a big focus on water. For me as a water ambassador, water is indeed the enabler for sustainable development, but it's also a leverage for a transformative approach, innovation, as this week is about. And I will guide you through my reasoning a bit. One, I start with the world where we are all part of, where you see that water has such a big presence, over 70% of all the water on the surface of the planet. And that looks like a lot, but now I take this big vacuum cleaner and I take all the water of the planet that's on the surface, in the lakes, in the rivers, in the seas, in the ice, on the poles. And if I take it all out, The world is still a sphere. Yeah, there are no bumps or holes all of a sudden in our planet. And I put all the water in this a big sphere that not even has the size of the United States. So because water is only on the side, on the surface of the planet, it feels like a lot, but it feels like there's abundance, but actually there's not a lot, and it's a scarce resource. And of all that amount of water, only 0.4% of the planet of water we can use. And that is just such a small amount of water. Now, water relates to the challenges we face, from disasters, being floods, droughts, wildfires, leading to migration patterns that are only increasing across the world. And 2019, last year, again, was a year of these disasters events, and we will see more of these examples in the coming years. And in the current pandemic, this is a scheme just taken now, an image of the world where we are now. Water is critically important too. Don't we all say, wash your hands? Well, for 2.3 billion people in the world, washing your hands because there is no access to safe water is a way out of reach. So health and challenges are all connected to water. And of course, with water, we think about floods and droughts happening across the world, but only impacting the places that are most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable people in the most vulnerable places hardest. Floods and droughts occur around the world, but the impact on humans is very much concentrated. So looking ahead in the challenges we face, we only will see an increase. And that means that we have to reinvent ourselves and how we deal with that uncertain future. We can't replicate the mistakes of the past. We have to reinvent that future. Business cases of the past present us with more vulnerability and less sustainability. And this is why 5 years ago, we agreed upon the Sustainable Development Goals. 17 goals that as a holistic, comprehensive, and connected agenda will help us drive the change we need. We agreed on the Paris Agreement to mitigate climate change and adapt to its challenges, to be able to tackle future challenges, not non-responsive, moving from crisis to crisis, not reactive, fixing with band-aid solutions temporarily crisis situations, but proactive, like in this conference, finding novel solutions to future challenges by partnering and looking ahead. And water can be a great enabler for those future opportunities. It is to water that all our challenges are connected. If we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, you'll find a relationship with water in each and every one of those goals. Women and kids that walk the wells, if there is no water available, with good drinking water available, health costs go down, mitigating climate risk with heat, nature-based solutions, or preventing floods, affordable and clean energy because of water, and of course food security, and so forth. So water is connected and therefore an enabler for delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. But to be able to do that, we have to understand that complexity. And if we understand that complexity, we have to value water across its relationships with all these SDGs. And based on that understanding and a more comprehensive and inclusive way of valuing, we can manage water better at our community scale, at the scale of our cities, our river basins, countries, and transboundary. But for that, we need to look ahead. We need a research, planning, and design agenda that looks long-term, sustainably, and comprehensive at the future, being connected to short-term and better innovative projects and interventions. So the plan needs projects as much as the projects needs the plan. And to be able to do this good, you need collaboration of all partners, public and private, institutional and informal, in a very transparent and accountable way. Doing this will drive the building capacity and enabling environment that is both institutional and individual. And innovation is critically important there. A design, innovation, and planning approach helps us deliver on solutions that are catalytic and pragmatic, but also solutions that have the capacity to connect, not only across our interests, our sectors, but also across scale and time. And with this innovation, with this innovative capacity, we also have a societal aspect, a political part, because these inspirations, these innovative actions, these designs are aspirational and inspirational. And this is what we need. We need catalysts to help us deliver on future promises and not reactive approaches that will actually get us to a more unsustainable world. And for that, collaboration is key. And the India-Dutch collaboration on water, therefore, is an inspiration, not only for the communities in India and in the Netherlands, but from across the world. I partnered with the communities, the governments, the businesses alike in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, with the Water as Leverage program, where we created the space of coming together and working together on water challenges and changing the project proposal process from a step-by-step approach to a very circular approach, where everybody was included from the beginning, communities, financiers and governments and businesses, and helped develop and deliver solutions up until the end. We do this Water as Leverage program across Asia, China, of course, as a best example, where we try to change the current water system into a holistic and circular approach that will deliver not only water for all its consumers and businesses, but also restore with nature-based solutions the natural capacity of our aquifers and help clean the water so we don't pollute our rivers and our oceans. Nature-based solutions at all scale in the city of Chennai drive resiliency and climate mitigation across and have the opportunity, not only because they tick all the boxes of the Sustainable Development Goals, but also because we can pilot them from the very small scale up, have the opportunity to drive the city's resiliency with water as a leverage from the bottom up. We start with a pilot, we scale it up with schools in Chennai, then across India. We do it on the neighborhood scale and then scale it up across Tamil Nadu. It's this replication and scaling up capacity of water as leverage in Chennai that we can bring to India and then to the world to help us deliver on the promise we made with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Water as leverage is an innovative approach. It improves the resiliency of our cities and their communities. It integrates an inclusive process by combining policy engineering, creativity, and local knowledge. And participating from the start, we're all partners to help us develop partnerships, collaborations that see these projects through all the way to maintenance and operation. In Chennai, it aligned with our national, bilateral, and global policies, with the Swachh Bharat, Clean India mission, with the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Jal Jeevan mission, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and with the Memorandum of Understanding between India and the Netherlands. In collaboration and cooperation with local governments and communities, partnerships like 100 Resilient Cities, the Dutch ministries, the Dutch Enterprise Agency, and international partners from financial institutions to help us deliver on this promise. It works. There's money for projects. Although investing in the process of collaboration, there is a gap in funding. Keeping the coalition together is tough. And to implement, to get the real feel of the concept is critically important. We now scale up locally, nationally, internationally, these Chennai water as leverage solutions and disseminate learning through our international research with the OECD. Water as leverage is an opportunity for the Dutch-India collaboration, but also an inspiration for the world. We can bring water security for all if only we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Henk, for your presentation. Now, as I said at the start of the day, at the session, that India Water Innovation Week has a specific topic every day. And the topic for day one is desalination. We are very proud to have the International Desalination Association as well as their affiliate, the Indian Desalination Association, as partners for this day today. And you know, they have curated the best speakers from across the globe for the audience today. So to start the session, I would hand it over to Borja Blanco, who is going to be the moderator for our evening today. Borja, over to you.
Thank you, Kailash, and thank you also to the Netherlands presentation, Henk Alving, who actually gave a great introduction of the problem, which is the lack of the proper quantity and quality of water in the world. We are going to spend the next 2 hours talking about the solution to this problem, particularly desalination and reuse. The agenda today, we are going to have an overview of the global desalination market by Mr. Carlos Cosin, the current president of IDA and CEO of Almar Water Solution. Ram, if we could have the presentation showing with the slide with the panel and the presenters. The whole discussion will start with 5 particular case studies on desalination from around the world. The first one presented by Miguel Angel Sanz, former president of IDA and director of strategic development for Suez. He'll give us a presentation from a point of view of France and a view of the world, followed by Mrs. Menataya Sadek, also an IDA director and the CEO of Hassan Alam Utilities. She will give us the point of view of what is happening right now in the country of Egypt. The third presentation will be by Mr. Devesh Sharma, first vice president of IDA, managing director of Aquatech in the US, and he will also give us a global view, but also from the point of view of the USA. So as you can see, we're seeing different territories and different points of views. The fourth presentation will be by Dr. Domingo Sarso. He's also an IDA director and the technical and R&D manager of Sasir Water in Spain. He will give us the Spain point of view and the particular view on irrigation. So we will see that desalination, which is often considered very expensive for some, it can be as affordable as being used in irrigation solutions. And the last presentation of the session will be by Mr. Nayan Shah, sales director of IDE Technologies in India, and he will give us a point of view of Israel. Followed by that, we'll have about Q&A, 10 minutes, hopefully. 5 presentations of 10 minutes, so nobody will bore you. They will just give you good ideas, and potentially we'll have some Q&A at the end. By the way, I invite all participants to post questions in the Q&A section of the screen that you can find at the bottom right, and we will be responding to the questions to as many as we can during the time allotted. Following the presentations and the short Q&A, we will have a panel discussion with 6 members of our distinguished group of speakers, and the discussion will be around the role of non-conventional water solutions in creating water security. We will have the Honorable Fatma Awale, IDA Director and former Minister of Water from the county of Mombasa, Kenya. We'll have Mr. José Díaz Caneja, IDA Director and Director General of Acciona Agua in Spain. Mr. Devesh Sharma, who I already introduced from Aquatech USA. Mrs. Menataya Sadek, also introduced from Hassan Alam Utilities in Egypt. Dr. Sergio Salinas, Associate Professor, IHE Delft Institute for Water Education in the Netherlands. And also Dr. Anand Vashi, Managing Director of EnviroControl Associates in India. We have representation from around the world, but we also have a specific people who can discuss the India situation and the solutions to the India problems today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the current president of IDA, Mr. Carlos Cosin, who will give us the overview of the global desalination market. Carlos, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction. And first of all, congratulations for the initiative to the Indian Water Innovation Week, together with the Smart Water and Water World and also our affiliate INDA, to organize this webinar in these current times with COVID, that we have not the possibility to organize in a face-to-face meeting, and we can therefore continue progressing with the developing of the desalination and water. Then I prepared this global overview about the desalination, and I try to cover not only the goals that we have achieved in the last 2 to 3 decades, Also, what is in our view the new challenges for the future. And also I try also to fix some concepts for the audience that they can understand, or much better understanding for the next panelist discussion, what we understand for non-conventional water treatments. Okay. Then in the next, please, if we can pass to the next slide. Okay. Then first of all, just to have you in your view, between reuse and desalination, nowadays we are capable to produce around less than 300 million cubic meters a day. I think that the last actual data that we have, desalination is providing between 135, 140 million cubic meters a day, and we are in the same range, a little bit more in reuse capacity with 145, 150 million cubic meters a day. The reality is that the desalination has been growing in the last year sustainable with the same rates. Reuse has been probably not advanced in the last 2 decades as fast as the desalination, but the reality is, as a consequence of mainly the industry and the new frames regulations in the reuse is now probably accelerating an expansion the use, especially for industrial purposes. Okay. In the future, we are managing or handling the same projections in the future, and probably between today to 2050, 20% or 30% will continue increasing in both. And the good thing is that will be very well balanced in continents. I think that all of them are using the non-conventional water treatments for his main purposes. It is true that probably in the Middle East is more common the desalination against the reuse, but is the opposite in Asia Pacific and Americas. And the trend is will continue in the same trend that has been used during the last years. Okay. If we go to the next page, let's start to understand what has been the evolution of the desalination. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the membranes technology was competing against the thermal processes, and there is big barriers that we have overpassed step by step. The first one is the membranes that using nowadays many energy recoveries has to face to reduce the energy consumptions, because if not, it was clearly impossible to continue and to maintain as a consequence of the big component of the cost. Then in the beginning, we introduced the Pelton turbines that allow to the technology reduce from 8 to 10 kilowatts hour per cubic meter to the range of 5 to 6. And therefore reduce drastically the component of the energy in the total global cost of the desalination. After that, we introduced some energy devices as the pressure exchanges, and we continue the incremental reducing of the energy demand. Together with these, many of new incremental behaviors in membrane flux, reducing the clogging of the cleaning, continuous operation, try to avoid the continuous stops of the plants, let us a very nice scenario nowadays, and we can say that we have practically reduced from $10 cubic meter a day in the 60s to less than $1 nowadays. And in fact, we have some records in the tariffs in a complete BOT projects in the Middle East that is giving us prices lower than the $0.50 per cubic meter. Then I think then the desalination has been really demonstrate that the desalination is now a commodity, is giving a very good comfort to the majority of the users. And the reality is that there are more than 21,000 installations worldwide. Total capex that has been invested in 2020 is around 50 billion, nearly 16 billions in capex in the world, with a record capacity in 2020 of 5.4 million cubic meters a day, and with record also in the total demand of energy. I saw this year that some plants has nowadays commitment with a level of warranties of less than 3.5 kilowatts hour per cubic meter, which is a clear record. And in some cases, we have seen 3.2 kilowatts hour per cubic meter. Then with this conclusion is desalination has demonstrated that it's available and affordable technology in the future. And nowadays, the big challenge is how to expand this technology in areas and continents that probably has not been the dominant use, okay? And in this sense, I have to remark that desalination together with the reuse are the two single or unique opportunities to generate new water resources out of the global water cycle in the world. In the next slide, please. I just want to remark that it is true that probably Saudi Arabia together with the Emirates represent half of the total new seawater awards in the past, but in the next 5 years, they will continue probably with, as a countries driving the growth of desalination, but there now a very good opportunities with a new programs in India, in China, in Egypt, and in many new countries in Africa and Latin America. Then at the end, we can say that we will continue with the same projections in operation capacity, and we expect for the next 5 years a continuous going up between 5 to 10% as we have faced in the past. Next slide, please. In this slide, I just want to remark how has been the effect of the scale that has been contracted during the last 2 years. We have moved from plants in the size of 100,000 maximum capacity just 10 years ago. We moved to 200, 250, and in the last 2 years, 2019 and 2020, we have that Saudi has contracted 2 plants in the size of 600, 2 plants in the size of 450, and Emirates has contracted 1 plant with more capacity of 500. Then this means, and at the tariff that I indicate in the table are real tariff that includes everything. They include 25 years operation. They include also the capex and investment to build the facilities, okay, with the level of the warranties. This is something that give a good possibilities for new countries to replicate this model. It is true that the contracts are very complex and they need also the mutual collaboration from the governments, private companies, public technological companies, EPC contractors, operators, and the financial sector. But at the end, this is a challenge that we have been followed in the last 10 to 15 years, and now it's becoming a reality. If we move to the next slide, just to give you an overview about what is happening with the reuse, just to remind that the reuse capacity, just one slide to summarize what is the actual capacity in India. India is now attacking a very ambitious plan in desal, especially for the industry. Nowadays, in the year 2020, the total capacity accumulate is 1.8 million cubic meters a day. The majority of the desalination program came from the sea, then it's 1.5 seawater against 340 brackish water. Majority of the technology is reverse osmosis systems, both for seawater and brackish water against the thermal. And in the opposition of the trends of the rest of the world, the principal or the main user in desalination in India is the industrial sector instead of the municipal sector of the utilities, okay? With 1.5 million instead against 587,000, okay? Moving, but I think that we have panels and nice discussions prepared to evaluate how and discuss how is the market in India, okay? If we move to reuse, just to remark that the final or the last data I have from the market in reuse is 146 million cubic meters a day. It is true that has been probably the last 5 years when the reuse has been expanded with a more level of comfort, and following the trend in United States, especially in California, Singapore, that has been dominated for the industrial uses, and also Israel, that we will see the opportunity to listen how has been the evolution in Israel, especially for agricultural purposes, okay? The important point in the water reuse has been probably the big barrier that we have faced in the past is that we have not, in general terms, a clear regulations to adapt and therefore impulse the water reuse as a one confidential and easy resources for, especially for the industrial agriculture. Nowadays, I think that following the trend in California and Singapore and Israel, European Union has launched a new directive that can be now responded to the majority of the countries. And I think that with this new framework of regulation, probably the reuse is ready to be expanded faster than what has been done in the past, because the technology is not an issue, the financial is not an issue, and therefore with the regulation in place, many of the countries can adapt this regulation to expand his use for the main purposes. Next slide, please. This is the installed capacity for the next 5 years, then, which means that probably we can increase 30 to 35% the total capacity that we have nowadays, which is an important growth, okay? And the main areas is very well balanced between China, United States, and the rest of the world, but also there are important countries as India that is going to contribute with another 8% of increase the current capacity that we have nowadays. Important also to remark that although the majority of the uses of the reuse has been industrial and agricultural, there are new challenges, and the reinjections in the aquifers to protect the intrusion of the salts and to have a new reservoirs for the future is starting to be one of the big topics for the reuse in the future. Next page, please. Okay, and just as a summary, what for me, and I discussed many these ideas with my colleagues, what are the new challenges in the future in both in reuse and desalination is first, is understanding the commodity uses of desal in the majority of the countries that has demonstrated the scale effect and the level of prices. We have to start to expand these evolutions to any other new areas as Latin America and Africa, that although they have his own pioneers projects in operation, I think is not being used as a commodity, okay? But when I refer to desal, and I'm not just talking about the seawater desalination, I think there is a huge demand and opportunities for brackish water, microfiltration, and nanofiltration, which are more cheap technologies, and probably in some cases in Africa and Latin America, we just need to remove colors, odors, or big molecules that is now contaminated or is polluting our aquifers and our rivers, and it's a very easy technology to be adapted, okay, to supply new resources of water that now they are not available. The second one is Once we have this regulatory in place, we need to expand this framework to any other areas, and therefore have the options to use the reuse for irrigations and for, which is the major use of the water, and industrial uses, okay? And the last one is also to continue this new trend that has been used in California and in some areas of Spain for new purposes to reserve water for future generations through the indirect drinking water injected in the aquifers, the reused water or desalination. For me, this is the new challenges, and I'm quite optimistic about the future of the non-conventional water treatments in the future. Thank you very much, Borja, and from my side, I think I covered the main topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Stay around because we have, hopefully after the case studies, some time for questions, and there may be questions for you. I'd like to introduce now Miguel Ángel Sanz, IDA, former president, director of strategy and development for Suez, France. Let's try to do this in 10 minutes. Miguel Ángel, thank you.
Thank you, Borja, for the introduction. I think we can pass for the first slide. Please. Next. First, I would like just to thank you, the India Water Innovation Week, to invite IDA and all of us just to share our experiences just for the Indian market, which is growing a lot. It has a lot of challenges. And first, we start just to say the desalination, as Carlos said, is a mature technology. They have over 50 years, especially in membranes history. Today, there is around 21,000 plants built around the world, and last year was 140 million cubic meters per day. At the end of this year, we expect to have 140 in 180 countries. The majority of the countries has the experience. Suez has been pioneer in this kind of technologies. We have, as reference, 3,400 plants worldwide. That is coming from the two companies we joined Suez. One was Degremont, the other the former GE Water. Between both, we have built 13,700,000 cubic meters per day in around 170 countries. We are also operator. We are operating 3,400,000 cubic meters per day worldwide. And we have 19 plants over 100,000 cubic meters per day. Today, I think we have selected 3 references, 3 experiences just to share what is the problem, what is the solution we can give. Every city has a different problem, it has a different solution, but in any case, the only replay is the plant must be reliable and sustainable. The first reference is, please push. The first reference I can present is, please next, is Barcelona in Spain. The second is Melbourne in Australia, and third is the Middle East, where it's a growing market in Barca in Oman. Every plant has always some target, some key points, just every desalination plant. The first is the intake, the seawater intake and brine discharge is key. The second is the pretreatment. The third is not only the design of RO, is the flexibility and the reliability of the plant just to supply the water in any condition. And the fourth, and not less important, is just to be sustainable and respect the environment. And of course, the energy consumption is a key point because it's a huge important component of the water. So we pass just to demonstrate, to show what is happening every these plants. Next one, please. Next slide. The first is Barcelona. I think Barcelona is one of the largest European desalination plant. The plant is running from the year 2009, and the plant was made just to solve several problems of the Barcelona city. First is just to have a sustainable supply of water when the dry arrives, and it's happening every 5-10 years. The second is just to reduce the salinity in the southeast area, because it's in this area the Llobregat River was bringing water with more salts. And this plant is able just to supply in a more difficult condition the water, at least for the 50 to 20% of the population of the metropolitan area of Barcelona. Next slide. Next, please. The most difficult is where the plant was built. You can see in the slide from the left, the Llobregat River was changing the course from the left just to build the extension of the new harbor of Barcelona. At the same time, in this plant, in this area was built one of the second large wastewater treatment plant of the Barcelona city. In the area for the extension of the harbor was filled with ground where the desalination plant was installed. Next, please. But taking into account the area where the plant was built, first, the Llobregat River is a Mediterranean river who has able the peaks of turbidity of over 10,000, so bringing a lot of suspended solid. Second, the risk of the airport. And third, the protected area of the close to the Barcelona airport and the beaches. So taking into account this condition, first, next slide, please. The intake and the brine discharge was a challenge. And finally, it was decided just to go to take a very deep intake, just to avoid any interference from the harbor or the river, doing 2 intakes of 60%, just to ensure the plant will be always giving the water, and is building a very strong pretreatment with 3 steps: DAF, flotation, gravity, and pressurized media filter, giving a lot of flexibility with in the plant, having 2 streams of 100,000 cubic meters per day. Each stream dividing in a very high number of trains, just to give the flexibility. And the other is just to go for a very deep and crisp discharge in a DBO model. So we are designing and operating the plant for 4 years. The plant is reliable and sustainable because it's running from the year 2009, and to be also sustainable, all the roof of the plant was were included the photovoltaic panels, just at least to supply in a small part of the electricity we are consuming, less than 2%, but it's important. Next one. The sustainability of this plant is important, even incorporating the sludge treatment, just to minimize the suspended solids we are discharging to the sea. You can see different picture of the plant. I think in the bottom on the right, you can see one of the more known picture in the world about a desalination plant. That's the colorful plant of Barcelona. Next one. We use this plant for 3 years at our research desalination center, because we started pilot before the construction and was running even during the period of the construction. The other key point in this plan is the way just to do the discharge using a new disposal, using the outlet of the wastewater treatment plant, just to blend with the brine with an ratio who is at least, in the worst case, the salinity of the water, just optimizing the discharge of the wastewater treatment plant. And after more than 10 years operation, there is not known any disturb in the environment in the area, and even in the intake. I think it's one of the more original discharge method you can use, but collocating with the wastewater treatment plant. Next. The second case is going to other part of the world, to Australia, to Melbourne, where it was built one of the largest BOT in the world, for a plant who was 450,000 cubic meters per day. It was a 30 years BOT, 3 years of construction, 20 years operating, and it's a plant who is made just to ensure the water supply to the city of Melbourne, and today is around 6 million inhabitants. Thus the plant is able, in the more difficult conditions, just to supply 50% of the drinking water of the city of Melbourne. And it was decided just to take a very clean water, just to optimize the operational cost, and to do only a simple only one step of pretreatment, doing a simple dual media filter pressurized with this good quality of water. There's 3 streams of 150,000 cubic meters per day, and this is spare just to build a new stream, just to totalize 600,000 cubic meters per day when the government decides just to increase the operation. The plant is situated at the south of the city, and there is a pipe to connect to the city, but over 105 kilometers. The plant is under operation. The commercial operation date was on the middle of December 2012. I think it's the first plant, is the largest plant in the world who is totally ensured to be fed by renewable energies. It's one of the intake around discharge was made by tunneling with a long tunnel of 1.42 kilometers and minus 25 meter depth, just to get, you can see the picture during the construction phase. They were going to minus 60 meters just to attack the two tunnels. The brine discharge is separated in an angle of the the length is 1.5 kilometers. It's going to minus 30 meters, and the distance between don't ensure no interference between brine and discharge. It was modelized. It was a lot of studies and modeling, real and by software, just to demonstrate there was no interference before the construction. Next, the plan is one of the greenest in the world, and is you can see the picture there. The treatment is very simple. Also, the sludge treatment as Barcelona was running just to minimize the suspended solids you are throwing to the sea. Next slide. And the plant is one of the greenest in the world. It was situated. Next slide, please. It's built in 38 hectares, but there is an area with an ecological area with 25 hectares with over 40,000 plants. The only way just to see this plant is from the air. If you are going to the road or you are walking around, you don't see the plant because it's dissimulated into the ground. And it was, as at least the first in Australia was Perth one, it was fed by renewable energy. It was the second, just to be in this condition. It was the largest one. It's totally zero carbon footprint. So there is no impact. How is very special in Australia because it's made by renewable energy certificates. So you have a contract with the producer of green energy, independent where air. In this case, we did the contract with two wind farms. One is the Auckland, the other is MacArthur Wind Farm, who are able just to supply the energy to the grid, at least in a higher quantity than the plant consumed in a year. So it's a year basic. Next one. In addition to this green plant, you go to Middle East. I saw just the other reliable experiences and sustainable because it's in Oman. It's the largest Omani plant with having a production of 280,000 cubic meters per day to supply water to the Muscat area. It's another BOT with a 2-year construction and 20-year BOT. It was very tight schedule as all the BOT just to be on time, just to supply the water at a reasonable price. And this plant is able just to supply 20% of the drinking water needs of the Muscat area. The plant was the third desalination plant made in the area. Barca 1, Barca 2 was also power plants, but also desalination plants made by reverse osmosis. This one was the first one without power plant, Barca 4. The plant is running from June 2018. Next slide. The characteristics of this plant is has taken the new advantages of the new technologies. They have only 2 pretreatment steps, increasing the velocity compared with the previous plant. And they have DAF and only 1 state of filtration with a very difficult water full of organic matter and time to time having algal bloom. So this is a security design because the intake was 2 pipes of 70% of the flow, just to ensure the plant at least will run at 70% flow. And the plant is flexibility enough just to supply water in every condition, having 12 trains and a partial second train just to respect all the quality demanded by our customer, the OPWP. There is a limestone filter just to remineralization, and also as all the plants we built, there has a sludge treatment, and the energy consumption is very optimized. It's less than 3 kilowatt hour per cubic meter, demonstrated every year in the reliable tests, where we have been between 2.8 to 2.9 kilowatt hour per cubic meter. That's something interesting in this plant. The open intake is made by, is cleaned by a picking system who has used several times, at least 1 per year, and is keeping the plant a full % production in the flow. Next slide.
We're going to have to conclude soon, huh, Miguel?
Yes,
sorry.
I think I am in the last slide. You can see some picture of the different parts of the Barca desalination plant, the aquadaf. We are able just to be covered in the case of heavy rains, and you can see the dual media filter has a system just to cover, just to avoid the algae developing inside. Another view of the plant, and even the storage tank for 1 day capacity, giving the plant a lot of autonomy. I think that's all I hope I have been on time, just showing 3 different experiences with 3 different problems in the world.
Thank you, Miguel Angel. Very interesting. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next presentation by Mena Sadek from Hassan Alam Utilities in Egypt, and she will give us a point of view of what's happening in Egypt and what is coming in the future. Mena, please. Please connect your video.
You. Yeah. Thank you, Borja. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll be quick. I'll set the clock so I finish in 10 minutes. Yeah, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, that's a very quick introduction about us and what we do. Basically, I think the focus of this presentation is about one of our subsidiaries, the closest subsidiary to my heart, which is the joint venture that we have with Almar Water Solutions. And the presentation today will be about the desalination market in Egypt. I think we can move on to the next slide, please. So everyone has been talking about the water situation in Egypt and the challenges that we have today. I have to say that this is a very new subject to us as Egyptians because we always grew up thinking, and rightly so, that the River Nile is more than enough to supply us with all our water needs. It wasn't until, quite recently that we were faced with the water scarcity situation. And this is mainly the result of a very high waste. So 28% is estimated to be the waste as the result of very old pipeline and networks, resulting in at least 4% of our cities and up to 25% of our villages that are not even connected to water pipeline. We do rely on the Nile River as a primary source, and I'll explain in a second, in the next few slides, why this has become a small problem recently. And we'll discuss the challenges today, which include the Grand Ethiopian Dam as well. So if we move on to the next slide. So basically, we have been suffering from water scarcity in recent years. And as I mentioned in the last slide, this is due to uneven water distribution, the misuse of our water resources, mainly in agriculture, the irrigation techniques, basically, that we've been using since very old times. Today, we have around 80 billion cubic meters, of which 55.5 cubic meters come from the Nile. This has always been our backbone and the primary source of drinking water for the population. However, as the United Nations predicts that by 2025, we will reach the level of absolute water crisis. And this is, as most of the people on this seminar probably know, this is absolute water crisis is less than 500 cubic meters per capita, which will be a serious constraint to our agriculture sector mainly. Because 80% of our water use is actually in agriculture water. This is a fact today. If we move on to the next slide, please. So around 70% of our rural communities have no wastewater treatment facilities. There is some $14 billion required in the next few years to invest in the wastewater sector to reach 100% sewage coverage. Over the past, and this was a very interesting figure for me to see, we have had a 75% drop in annual per capita renewable freshwater resources over the past almost 3 decades. And of course, the freshwater per capita is predicted to be, we hopefully won't reach that, but we're predicted to reach the water crisis level in the next 5 years or so. So that's on one hand. As you can see from this slide, thank you, the water supply versus the water demand gap in Egypt, and as we discussed, we're already today at the water scarcity level almost, and this is expected to get worse if we don't do something about it. Next slide, please. So what's the solution? What do we do? Of course, the recent situation, which is caused mainly by population growth and water, let's put it this way, some misuse. The government is aiming to solve this problem, of course, by several means. Today, we will focus on one of the solutions, which is desalination. We aim to implement a very ambitious plan to build 47 seawater desalination plants. This plant is mainly supervised and monitored by a cooperation between very strong and very different organizations, namely the Holding Company for Water and Wastewater, NUCA, which is the New Urban Communities Authorities, as well as the General Organization for Planning. So this is a big program. It will require around 45 billion Egyptian pounds of investments. And the objective of this particular program is to produce more than 2.4 million cubic meters per day by 2025. This is the announced figure on the record today, but we know that this figure is constantly being updated upwards, not downwards. And there are always talks about reaching, and we'll see in the next slide some numbers, but about reaching much more, building many more capacities, much more capacities than this. Next slide, please. So just a glimpse, our existing capacity, I've heard previous presentations, and of course, our capacities seem very low compared to what my colleagues have presented in the rest of the world. We have around 800,000 cubic meters per day existing capacities and around 500 ongoing as we speak. Historically, we had very small installations, but we're starting to see bigger installations, most recently in a couple of projects. Yeah, so this has been the case. Most plants treat seawater, but a growing number of plants are using brackish water. Next, please. This is mainly, if you're familiar with Egypt, you would know where these cities lie, but this is the ongoing desalination plants and their capacities. The existing on the right, on your right-hand side, the existing desalination plants with the capacities. So if you see that Matouh is a coastal city by the Mediterranean, the Red Sea is, by the Red Sea, South Sinai and North Sinai are also by the Red Sea. But this is mainly where we're headed to, of course, for our existing and new plants. Some new cities are coming, which were not existing, like Port Said and like the Ahliya, but we're seeing also more facilities in the coastal cities as we go on. Next slide, please. So this is the government's, not 30-year plan, but broken down by 5 years. This is a very strategic plan announced by the government. And as I mentioned, it's being constantly updated. So basically, and I think this is the message or the purpose of the presentation today, is to say that the government is planning around 6.5 million cubic meters per day of additional capacity by 2050. However, if we focus on the next decade, so from 2021 until 2030, this is where the bulk of investments is expected. And I won't be surprised if some of this is even earlier than what is depicted in the graph, which is the official figures. If we move on to the next slide, please. So basically, what I wanted to say today is that we do need, there's a big need for us in Egypt to diversify and expand our country's water resources. Desalination is definitely a key focus for us as a country in the coming years. The figures speak for themselves. So I know I confused you guys with a lot of figures over the past few slides, but there are today, as we speak, 20 desalination plants under different stages of procurement, under public ownership. There's another around 30 plants under planning. There's total capital spending of more than $3 to $5 billion. And as said, a capacity of around 6.4 million cubic meters per day of water over until 2050. The point here is that given the size of these investments, there has to be a cooperation between the public and the private sector. The desalination market in Egypt and the existing capacities have been dominated by an EPC model. So the government has been financing those very important key projects. We believe that this doesn't have to continue to be the case because the private sector is there. The private sector has developed experience and capacity in this area. And we expect to see private sector involvement through public-private partnerships, through BOT models like what happened in other countries very soon, given the size of the investment, the experience needed, and the risk-sharing framework that we as the private sector have to offer to the government. Last but not least, there are a lot of investors who are willing to support these projects, including the Sovereign Fund of Egypt, who have announced their plan to invest around 30 billion Egyptian pounds in desalination plants in cooperation with the government, with the public and the private sectors. So this is a very good sign of goodwill from an investment perspective, so we can implement a blended model where the old model definitely has room to grow, but also the involvement of the private sector through a BOT model has room to happen. So this will be an exciting journey for everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mena. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Devesh Sharma, IDA's current first Vice President and Managing Director of Aquatech in the US. Devesh, please try to stick to 10 minutes and connect your video, please. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone, or good morning. It's morning for me. Wanted to walk through what I see as key trends in the global desalination market. I've heard a lot about demand. We just heard a lot of exciting things about the growth that's happening in Egypt, and Carlos went through a very good overview of the growth in desal and reuse around the world. So I won't go a lot into that, but demand is growing. That's definitely a key trend. Some of the things I'll focus a little more on are we're in the golden age of technology, and that's really driving what's most important. And when we started this webinar today, within the first 5 minutes, the first question was about cost and energy. I think Carlos put up a great statistic that we've gone since 1960 to today from $10 per meter cubed to less than 50 cents, actually closer to 30 cents per cubic meter. And, this is a variety of, this is a result of a lot of technological advancement. So cost is theoretically trending in the right direction. Practically, that's a little more complicated, and I'll get a little bit more into that. And one of the next horizons to be the great leveler of cost in desal has to be looking at the right business models to drive to ultimately the lowest cost of water. Next slide. So demand is growing. You see on the right a nice steady growth of operating capacity that'll go online in global desalination. We're between now and 2025, we're going to add in the world more than 12 million meter cubed a day of desalination capacity. I think everybody understands that. There's no doubt. What I wanted to stress is what we're seeing is that the demand is growing not only in the Middle East. And historically in our industry, we've seen most of the growth come from the Middle East. The Middle East has been robust. It continues to be robust, but we're seeing in what we've considered non-traditional seawater desalination markets, the growth happening, and that's very exciting. Reuse is more prevalent in North America. Still, desal has yet to come in a big way in North America. We have a few larger plants, but there's a lot of dialogue increasing in places like Texas, California, Florida. Water scarcity and industrial development is driving growth in Latin America, particularly in Chile with the mining industry. And one of the reasons we're all here today is India. India really has potential to be the bright spot in desalination market. Significant growth coupled with extreme water scarcity means there's really no choice. And we have great momentum in India. Last year, the 270 MLD program for Gujarat water infrastructure was awarded under a hybrid annuity model. And, this is a great sign of things to come in India, and, very excited to continue this dialogue today. Next slide. So when we talk about technology and desalination, it's all about how are we driving lower costs. So if you see on the right, you can see a breakdown of what makes up the costs of desalination, the operating cost. And of course, it's, the biggest component to there is energy, and therefore a lot of the focus in technological improvement has been on energy. Energy and general OpEx. One of the biggest areas of improvement over the last decade have been cheaper power sources, especially solar power. Can you get the energy that's supplying the plant to be cheaper? There's also been significant work and ongoing work in lower energy consumption. Can you consume less energy? The biggest, which has been energy recovery devices. A lot of processes coming out to drive that energy lower than, we've crossed the threshold of 3 kilowatt hours per cubic meter. Now every focus is how to get to 2, how to get to 1.5. And so energy is a big area of improvement. But by far the biggest emerging area of technological improvement in desalination is the digital solutions that drive data and operating optimization. There's a lot of work going on to this, in this area. This is going to drive energy and chemical optimization, which will lower costs. It'll drive labor optimization. So this is a very exciting area that I would keep an eye on. And of course, last but not least, big area of focus has been on how to reuse our water better, how to manage the brine, how to drive to higher recovery, how to go to zero liquid discharge more economically, and how to reuse the waste to beneficial reuse of the zero liquid discharge, how to make reusable salts, how to get minerals out of the salt, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a brief high-level overview of the technological trends. Next slide. So I started this presentation to talk about the state of the desal industry in North America. And whenever I sit down to do this, if you see on the right, the picture tells a story, and this is the price of desalinated water. And, you know, we always want to understand, you know, I talked great about the cost of treatment. The treatment is clearly trending downwards, technological improvement, efficiencies, but is the cost of desal really trending downward? And the answer to that is it's complicated. It depends. So you see Carlsbad, California has a cost of desal, and you know, one of the largest plants in the Western Hemisphere, of $1.61 per meter cubed. Some of the more recent projects in the Middle East, in the UAE, Israel, Saudi Arabia, are trending towards 30 cents per cubic meter. And this is the big question that has us scratching our heads. Why is the price so different when the technology is by and large the same? Well, you know, there are issues of cost. There's OpEx costs. CapEx costs of, you know, the cost of, you know, building a plant in the United States is more than building a plant in the Middle East. We can't forget the issues of scale. But what I want to, you know, bring to everybody's attention is there's also a lot of unexpected costs, hidden costs of desalination. You know, they're in the politics, they're in the permitting and environmental considerations, a lot of issues in the United States regarding permitting, which drive up the cost of capital, which drives up the cost of water. Local energy costs really drive this, and the procurement model, which is what I want to get to in the next slide. Next, please. So the right business model is critical. What we cannot control in the desal industry, we can certainly advocate, is you know, is around the politics, around the permitting, around the environmental approvals. What we can control are the local energy costs and you know, drive them lower, and also the procurement model. And what I mean about this procurement model is, I think Minna just brought it up in her presentation about Egypt. You know, a lot of traditional procurement models have been focused on EPC, they focus on CapEx, and really the focus has to be on long-term performance and accountability. It has to be on realistic contract terms that facilitate lower financial risk. Financial costs also contribute to that price of water significantly. And what this really needs to drive through is a water purchase model, you know, PPP, hybrid annuity, BOO, because the focus has to be on the lowest cost of water. And what we don't need is we don't need the cheapest Rolls Royce. We need reliability and the lowest cost of ownership. And that's what the right procurement model in desalination will get you. Last slide, next slide. So really what we need to succeed in our water management is balance. You know, a holistic approach is needed to manage water. Before anything, we have to focus on, you know, curbing leakage, reducing our consumption. You know, once we do that, that'll drive to more reuse. Reuse is, you know, intrinsically a more cost-effective form of water. And then you also get to desalination. Desalination is just a piece of the puzzle. It's a growing piece of that puzzle, but it's a piece of many others. And, you know, as I said, we have the technology. Desalination is getting better, it's getting stronger, it's getting, you know, more cost effective, but we need more than that. We need, you know, the right business model. We need the supportive political atmosphere, because we all have to keep our eye on the ball, and that is long-term, consistent, lowest cost of water. Thank you very much. I see Borja coming on the screen to remind me it's time to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Deves. You've done really well. Thank you so much for keeping the time.